Welcome to Mysterious Japan, created by Heath Havey and dedicated to Japan's dark histories, ghost stories, and frightful folklore. This is the dark side of Japan. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to episode 34 of Mysterious Japan. Today we begin the first of the 3 tales from Nihon Sandai Kaidan. Translated, this means the 3 great ghost stories of Japan. Echoes of these tales still exist in today's media. Descendants of these 3 great ghost stories persist in popular culture, from movies like The Ring and The Grudge to literature and memes on social media, and in manga and anime, both in Japan and around the world. The tales of vengeful spirits and the supernatural borrow these same frightful themes and images that have existed for centuries in Japan. Perhaps the primary image persisting to this day is the ghost of a young woman with long black hair hanging loose around the head. The hair is tangled and uncanny, often covering part or all of the face. The clothes are white, and the specter has no feet. This type of vengeful spirit existed with great popularity in kabuki theater, as well as the ukiyo-e paintings that depicted the strange and uncanny in visual panels from the 17th to 19th centuries. The opening credits thus speak. These spirits of vengeance and often disembodied rage are called the onryo, sometimes referred to as grudge spirits. They typically roam the earth as incarnate emotions of vengeance, rage, and hate. In life, they encountered betrayal that led to their death, and their tragic tales have been told for centuries. Today, we retell the first of the 3 great ghost stories, the tale of Otsuya. This ghost story is generally known as Botan Doro, meaning the Peony Lantern. There are different versions of this story, and today we examine the traditional tale. As with many ghost stories in Japan, it purports to be based on a true story. Even now, if you visit the shrine called Shinbanzuin, you may be told where to find the graves of the subjects of this tale. You may find the lichen-covered tombs and graves with inscriptions on the gravestones. And a statue of the Buddha Jizan may just overlook the graves of these ill-fated souls buried in the 18th century, 300 years ago, when our tale takes place. How much of this story is true remains a mystery. How much is inspired by true events is unknown. But one fact is not contested, and that is that this is one of the most well-known of all Japanese ghost stories. Part 1. Meeting Otsuya. Shinzaburo Hagiwara is a ronin, a masterless samurai. History does not tell us how he became masterless, but some sources say he was married and his wife died very young, leaving him a grieving widower. He himself is just 21 years old, and without a daimyo to serve, he retreats into himself, often locking himself in his house for days. He is known among the locals as a shy and tender-hearted samurai who spends his days in his manor reading books. As a samurai, he owns fields and tenement houses in the valley that give him steady income and many servants to take care of. To get him out of the house and back into the world of the living, his doctor friend invites Shinzaburo to go up to a villa to meet a young lady who is the daughter of a hatamoto named Eijima Hizayamon. The hatamoto are the most elite samurai. They compose the special military forces directly serving the shogun. They not only have the highest stature among samurai, but also among the military aristocracy. Their word is law, and their actions are not questioned. This includes when they decide to carry out executions. And Hatamoto Ijima is known to be proud and ruthless, quick to lop off the heads of any who do him wrong. Ijima took a second wife when his daughter Otsuya was 16 years old. But Otsuya and her mother-in-law did not get along. So, Ijima built his daughter a separate villa in the countryside. Shinzaburo's doctor friend also happens to be the physician of Otsuya, and he knows the 2 lonely souls would get along well. He is right, and the samurai and the noble young lady fall in love almost immediately when they meet. Otsuya loves Shinzaburo's gentle demeanor, and after the doctor leaves them alone to attend to affairs in another room, they pledge themselves to each other. In just one meeting, they bond to each other for life. So fond of Shinzaburo is Otsuya that she says to him,
"If you do not come to see me again, I shall surely die."
Due to etiquette, Shinzaburo cannot see Otsuya alone, but he is determined to meet her again as soon as possible. As they return home, the doctor promises to take him back to the villa again to see Otsuya and resume their affections. But he knows he cannot keep this promise. The affection between the two is all too clear. And Otsuya's father will surely hold the doctor responsible if anything improper happens between the two. After all, Shinzaburo is a ronin without a master. His station may be too low to have romantic involvement with the Hatamoto's daughter. And the doctor is all too aware of Ichima's reputation for cutting off the heads of those who disrespect him or bring shame on his family. The doctor regrets introducing the two and decides he will not take Shinzaburo back. To avoid the awkwardness of the conversation and ire of the young samurai, he avoids the young ronin, and days turn into weeks. Despair at being unable to return overcomes Shinzaburo. He locks himself in his manor, and the anxiety results in a long illness that weakens him in body and soul. Every time he sends a messenger for the doctor, he is given excuses. Not only did this result in the inability to meet Otsuya again, but the toll of this prolonged depression and illness requires the care of his physician. He cannot eat or sleep, and he sinks deeper into despair as the weeks turn into months. Finally, unable to bear it any longer, Shinzaburo sends a messenger ordering the doctor to visit him. This was a summons the doctor cannot refuse. When the doctor arrives, he bows low to the ground in shame, prostrating himself before the samurai. Shinzaburo says,
"I have been sick since spring and cannot eat. Why have you been so cruel by not calling on me? You said we would visit Lady Iijima again, and I long to thank her for our visit by sending a present. You know I cannot go by myself, especially with her father being the jealous and powerful man that he is."
The doctor bows deeply again but remains silent. This silence is a bad omen, but Shinzaburo waits for an answer. The doctor finally says,
"The mistake I made was in introducing you to begin with. I thought you would enjoy each other's company, but I did not expect the two of you to fall instantly in love. If her father heard of this, the blame would fall upon me. He would take my head, and he would take yours, but I'm afraid I have distressing news for you."
Shinzaburo stiffens.
"Distressing news? What is it?"
The doctor pauses again, but knows he must continue.
"After receiving your summons, I visited the villa first to call upon Otsuya. But upon doing so, I was given terrible news. Otsuya is dead. According to her servants, after the passing of months, Otsuya believed you had scorned her love, and she pined away and died. Her heart was broken. My closest maidservant was so distressed by the death of Otsuya that she too died, and the two were buried together. We must leave the dead for the dead and move forward. We should not talk of this to her father. All you can do now is recite the Nembutsu prayers for her soul."
Shinzaburo sits back in stunned silence. Before he can recover enough to react with anger or vengeance, the doctor anxiously excuses himself and leaves the Ronin's manor. His guilt is enough without bearing the wrath of this young samurai, who could also take the doctor's head in anger or grief if he wanted. But Shinzaburo is a kind and forgiving young man. He does not call back the doctor or have him punished. He does nothing but sink further into despair. Part 2. Reunited. The grief leaves Shinzaburo back in bed, but after a few days he gathers the strength to inscribe Otsuya's name on a mortuary tablet. He places the tablet in the Butsudan altar in his manor. To this, he presents offerings and repeats the Nembutsu prayer daily. Otsuya's in his thoughts at all times. But Shinzaburo retreats more deeply inside himself. Solitude is his only sanctuary. But when the Obon festival of the dead is arriving, he decides to follow the customs of the season. For this festival in August, he decorates his house. This includes setting out peony lanterns that guide the returning spirits home and setting out food for ghosts on the shelf of souls in the Kamidana. On the first night of Obon, he lights a small lamp in front of the mortuary tablet for Otsuya and begins his prayers. The hot summer evening draws him out to the veranda, where he fans himself and looks out upon the quiet neighborhood. In this isolated valley, only occasionally does anyone pass by. His servants are indoors by this time of night. The only sounds he hears are the rippling stream rushing nearby, the buzzing of insects, and an occasional breeze rippling through the trees. But then a clip-clopping sound interrupts his thoughts. He knows this sound. It is the sound of wooden geta, women's wooden clogs worn with a kimono. The clapping sound of the geta approach closer to his manor until they reach the hedge around his garden. A curious Shinzaburo stands on his tiptoes to see who approaches. 2 women round the hedge. One carries a lantern decorated with peony flowers. She appears to be a servant. The other girl is dressed in an elaborate kimono, while half covering her face with the sleeve of the kimono. Shinzaburo gasps as he recognizes Otsuya and her servant Oyone. He thought them both dead, but here they are, alive. The doctor must have lied to him to save his own skin from Otsuya's vengeful father. The maid sees him and says how strange it is to meet him here. Shinzaburo says in reply,
I remember you well. Oyone. Oh, it is so good to see you.
But then Oyone says,
How is this possible? We were told you had died.
Shinzaburo shakes his head.
No, it is I who was told that both of you were dead.
Shinzaburo apologizes profusely for not visiting sooner. They each discover that the doctor had told the women that he was dead, and had told him that they had died, and all this to protect himself from the wrath of the Hatamoto. Ayane says,
It was such a wicked thing for him to say such a thing. He took advantage of your trusting disposition and the kind nature of my mistress. I suspect it might be the mother-in-law of my mistress who told the doctor to say such things.
During their talk that night, it is the maidservant Oyone who speaks. Otsuya sits quietly and sadly. Her downcast face remains half hidden in her sleeve, as if to bury tears. Oyone tells Shinzaburo that Otsuya wanted to cut off her hair and become a nun upon hearing that Shinzaburo had died. But Oyone convinced her to only become a nun in her heart. Then her father wanted her to marry a powerful young samurai, but Otsuya refused. Oyone says,
Instead of staying in that repressive villa, we fled. We found a very small house in Yanakano no Ozaki. We are able to get by, but just barely, by doing a little private work.
Oyone tells Shinzaburo that Otsuya has been repeating the Nembutsu every day on behalf of Shinzaburo. In fact, on this very night, they went to the nearby temple to pray for him on the first night of the dead. They were on their way home when they encountered him on his veranda. What a shock it was, because they had not even known where he lived. Throughout this discussion, Shinzaburo expresses how extraordinary these events are, and how it seems like a dream, like karma has brought them together. He shows them how he himself had been praying for Otsuya, and takes them to the mortuary tablet on his altar. Oyone turns to the demure and silent Otsuya, and then back to Shinzaburo.
We are so grateful for your kindness and remembrance. In fact, my mistress says she does not mind being disowned by her father for 7 lifetimes if it means she can be with you. Will you allow her to stay here tonight with you?
Shinzaburo fills with such joy that he almost loses his samurai composure. He bows and asks that they please remain overnight, but that they must keep their voices low because his neighbor is meddlesome. That night and for 7 nights thereafter, the 2 young women return to Shinzaburo and stay the night. Each night they arrive just after sunset and leave again just before dawn. Shinzaburo and Otsuya become more attached to each other every night. fettered by love and entangled by bonds exceeding words. The two lovers sleep in each other's arms every night that week. Otsuya talks openly when they are alone and Oyoni is out of the room, and their discussions hide them under a mosquito net hanging over his bed. They devise ways in which they could be together despite her disavowing and vengeful father. Part 3. The Servant's Discovery. Shinzaburo was properly concerned about his neighbor. Named Tomozo, the neighbor lives in a small cottage adjoining Shinzaburo's manor. He and his wife are servants of Shinzaburo, and their devotion allows them to live in comfort next door. But Tomozo is a prying and inquisitive man, and he hears the voice of a woman from his master's manor. Now Tomozo remains utterly devoted to Shinzaburo. In fact, he is so protective of Shinzaburo's gentle and kind demeanor that he fears some wanton woman is taking advantage of his master in his loneliness. And so on the next night, when he hears the voices again from the room, he tiptoes closer and leans in to hear the conversation between the two lovers. He overhears the woman asking if she can live with him if her father disowns her. Shinzaburo says he would welcome that more than anything, but he does not believe her father would disown her because he loves her very much as his only daughter. What he fears more is that her father will separate them or even take out his wrath on Shinzaburo. Her response chills Tomozo as he listens from the other side of the wall.
Never could I accept any man other than you as my husband. Even if our secret becomes known, and even if my father kills me for what I have done, I will still seek you out after death and think of you unceasingly. And I do not think you yourself would be able to live long without me either.
Tomozo is not only shocked by what this woman says, but also because she speaks as a noble woman, not a common woman or servant. Tomozo sneaks around the manor trying to find a spot where he can get a closer look through the window to see the woman. Who is she? Why is she here? Who is her powerful father? And does Tomozo have an obligation to report this? Finally, he is able to climb up to peek in through the window and into the room dimly lit by the Peony Lantern. And he sees her, and when he sees her, a chill runs up his spine, his hands tremble, and he nearly falls from where he precariously peeks in through the window. He is not looking upon a beautiful young noblewoman. What he sees is a corpse. Skeletal fingers caress the hair of Shinzaburo. The decomposing face of the woman is half bone and half grayish contortion of flesh and muscle. The eyes stare at the young Ronin in the bed next to her with the glaze of death. The emptiness in those eyes filled Tomozo with horror. The corpse is clad in a white kimono traditional of those used to clothe the deceased at the time of burial, and the kimono trails down to nothing. There are no feet on this hideous body. The black hair hangs straight and wiry, down over parts of the face to the bed and the young unsuspecting Ronin beneath. A movement on the right side of the room pulls Tomozo's attention from the corpse caressing Shinzaburo's face and to the doorway. Another woman approaches from the far door as if sensing Tomozo peering in at the young lovers. This woman is also a corpse, and she raises an arm as if to accuse him. Tomozo falls back from his position at the window and flees in unspeakable horror to the house of his friend Yusai. Now Yusai was a ninzomi, which is a Japanese physiognomist who prognosticates the future and is a type of fortune teller and psychic medium of the day. These are professional scholars who give advice and read ancient texts to understand how people should act. Yusai had read Chinese books describing love between the living and the dead, but had thought this was impossible. He does not know what to believe of Tomozo's story, but he certainly believes something strange must be going on at Shinzaburo's manor. If what Tomozo said is true, then Yusai knows Shinzaburo is doomed. In the Chinese texts, if a woman is a ghost, then the seduced man will die quickly unless saved by the living. If she truly is a ghost, he knows, then signs of death will appear on Shinzaburo's face as well, because death is negative and life is positive, and the negative will infect the positive, bringing death to the living over the course of days or weeks. Yusai instructs Tomozo not to say anything about this to anyone, not even his wife. That way they can investigate and take action properly without alerting anyone or causing further problems. Yusai confronts Shinzaburo the next morning, but the young samurai denies that any women visited him. Yusai persists, and Shinzaburo understands that the Ninsomi has no selfish desires and only wants to help, so he admits the visitation and urges that the matter should remain a secret. He intends to make the lady Otsuya Ijima his wife as soon as possible. Yusai loses control of his emotions at this point. He tells Shinzaburo that his plan is utter madness and that the two women are dead spirits visiting him each night. He says,
You knew for months that she was dead. You repeated the Nembutsu prayer for her. You have a mortuary tablet in her name on your altar. And we are in the week when the dead are known to rise. What more proof do you need? The lips of this dead woman have been on your lips. The hands of this dead woman have caressed your body. I can see in your face the signs of death. Will you not believe at last?
Shinzaburo denies this. She cannot be dead. Each night he sees her full beauty and knows she is a thriving and beautiful young woman. He thinks this must be some sort of ruse, a cruel joke. But then Yusai says,
The moment I saw you, I could see the signs of death in your face. I beg of you to listen to my words, or you will not have even 20 days left to live.
Yusai tells Shinzaburo he must visit the place where the two women told him they live and check for himself. He will find the truth there. Overcome with frustration by the obstinate defiance of the love-stricken young samurai, Yusai excuses himself and leaves before he says something he will later regret. Part 4. Visiting Yanaka no Sasaki. Shinzaburo remembers that they said they live in Yanaka no Sasaki, but he cannot believe what the Ninsomi had told him. Had his nights with Otsuya been just an illusion? That did not seem possible. She is a vibrant young woman, not a corpse. He would know. But he also knows he had to investigate as Yusai suggested, even if it is to prove the Ninsomi wrong. That day he visits Yanaka no Sasaki and begins searching the streets for the two women. In front of each house is a placard with the family name written on it, and he looks at each one. He also remembers the description of the little house that the maidservant Oyone told him about, yet he cannot find any place matching that description. He inquires of those living in that quarter about the two single women living together, but no one knows anything about them. It is time to give up this quest, he thinks, and he determines that the fastest route home will be through the Buddhist temple of Shinbanzuien. This path has him passing through the graveyard on the site of the temple. His attention is drawn to two new tombs placed side by side at the rear of the temple. One of these is a common tomb for a person of humble rank, but the other is large and ornate. Hanging from it is a beautiful peony lantern left from the Festival of the Dead. His heart drops. This peony lantern is exactly the same as the one the maid Oyone carries each night when they come to visit him. The coincidence is too much, and Shinzaburo races up to the tomb to look at the name inscribed there. But there is no name. He finds this odd. Most tombs have the family name and some sort of posthumous name called a Buddhist kaimyo. It should have something indicating who is buried inside. Unable to shake the fear gripping him, he runs to an acolyte of the temple and demands to know who is buried in that tomb. The acolyte tells him that it had been erected recently for the daughter of Lord Iujima, the Hatamoto of Ushigome. The young girl's name was Otsuya, and the humble tomb next to it belongs to her maidservant, named Oyone. The young maid died of grief soon after the funeral of Otsuya. Shinzaburo kneels before the tomb and remembers the words of Oyone on their first visit. She had said, "Instead of staying in that repressive villa, we fled. We found a very small house in Yanaka no Sasaki. We are able to get by, but just barely, by doing a little private work. So the very small house is a tomb here, in the temple cemetery in Yanaka no Sasaki. But what could the little private work be? What did she mean by that?" When he returns home, he visits Yusai, who sends him back to the high priest at the temple where the two women are buried. The high priest is known in the region to be a wise and spiritual leader who can discern karma and the wrongs that cause any bad karma. The high priest tells Shinzaburo that he committed some grievous error in a former life that is coming back as karma that binds him to the dead. He tells Shinzaburo that the spirit of the woman is not driven by hate and has no desire to harm him. In fact, she is pulled to him by deep affection and love. She has been in love with him in many previous lifetimes for at least 100 years, and she is not able to cease following after him in each lifetime. This karmic attachment means that Shinzaburo cannot easily escape her influence. Ryoseki provides Shinzaburo with a gold image of a Buddha meant to protect the living from the dead. He tells the young samurai to wear it next to his body at all times. At the temple and gravesite, the priests will perform rituals to bring peace to the troubled spirit, but it will take some time. Until then, Shinzaburo must recite a holy sutra every night. The high priest Ryoseki also provides Shinzaburo with ofuda, which are strips of paper with religious texts written on them. He instructs Shinzaburo to hang these from the walls and entrances of his manor as protection from the dead spirits. As Shinzaburo thanks him, the high priest emphatically tells him that he must not forget to recite the sutra every night without fail, and that the ofuda must hang around his entire manor without leaving any space open for the spirits to enter, and he must wear the medallion against his chest as protection. Shinzaburo promises to obey those instructions, and indeed, he intends to obey them. Fear has been creeping into his heart, and the night is quickly approaching. Part 5. Otsuya returns. Shinzaburo follows all the instructions of the high priest with the help of Yusai. But then Yusai returns home at sunset, leaving Shinzaburo alone for the night. Many hours pass deep into the night. The bells of the temple finally ring in the hour of the ox, 2 o'clock in the morning. This is the time when spirits are loosed upon the earth. But Shinzaburo is confident that he has done what he is supposed to. He recites the sutra and grasps at the medallion at his chest. That night, he is too disturbed by the day's events to sleep. And it is at this hour of ghosts and demons, that he hears the clippity-clop of Geta approaching his manor. A sweat breaks out on his forehead and he again recites the sutra. The footsteps move more slowly than usual, and they stop just on the other side of the hedge of bushes near his garden. He cannot stand the weight, and he stops reciting the sutra to rush over and peek behind the hedges, remaining hidden from whatever waits beyond. Otsuya stands there, and Oyone stands next to her with the Peony Lantern. They both gaze up at the ofuda strips of Buddhist text hanging from his door in the frame of his house. Otsuya appears more beautiful than ever. Shinzaburo feels his heart drawn to her. He cannot resist her, even though the terrors still rage within his heart. Love and horror fight within his heart, a struggle that puts him in a living hell. They do not see him standing nearby, and the maidservant Oyone says,
My lady, we cannot enter. Your true love must have changed his mind. He has broken his promise to be with you and fastened the doors to keep us out. We must leave and never return, for he must not want to see you. He is more cruel than we imagined.
Otsuya is close to tears when she responds,
We made pledges to each other. We promised. His heart cannot be so cruel. We must find some way to him. I cannot believe he would do this to me. If we cannot go in, we will never be able to return home again.
Shinzaburo feels drawn to her, but the fear of death still remains. While she talks, Otsuya has veiled her face with her long kimono sleeves. But is she a walking corpse underneath? Or is she as beautiful as he remembers seeing her each night? He sees no rotting corpse. He never has. There are no protruding bones or decaying flesh. She is more beautiful than ever. Oyone leads Otsuya around the house to see if there is another way in. Shinzaburo returns inside the manor, and night after night, at exactly the same late hour, he hears them returning, but he chooses to save himself as he chants the sutra and keeps them out. Part 6. Tomozo's Dilemma. A figure stands over Tomozo late in the night. He fears a terrible nightmare has come true as he looks up and sees the horrific, decomposing face of Oyoni staring down at him. He muffles a scream, afraid of waking his wife. The corpse ghost has now entered his home. The ashen skin tightens around her face as the maidservant begs Tomozo to remove the Ofuda from Shinzaburo's smallest window. Even that small entry will allow her mistress to enter. Fearful of this specter, Tomozo promises to do as she asks, but each day he relents. He fears these vengeful spirits may harm his master. But she returns each night, waking him deep in the night to renew his promise. Finally, late one night, a storm rages outside, and the figure of Oyone, a rotting corpse with piercing eyes, appears at the foot of his bed. Her wrath is apparent on her twisted face, no longer the innocent yet rotting face of a young maid. She says,
You play games with us. Strive not, for if you do not take away the Ofuda from that window as you promised, then you will learn how we can hate. You will learn how we can strike vengeance on you.
She swings her face toward him, and the lantern lights up such a frightful corpse of rotting flesh and bone that Tomozo screams out in fright. The scream wakens his sleeping wife, who hears the woman talking to her husband, but when she looks over, she sees only her husband shaking in terror. No one is there, and the doors are all closed. She believes her husband has taken a lover. To defend his actions, he reveals the secret of Shinzaburo and the ghosts that will not leave him or his master alone. His ever-so-clever wife devises a plan to make conditions with this dead spirit. And thus when they return, again the next night, Tomozo goes out to meet the risen corpses. He tells them that he cannot take away the Ofuda because he and his wife depend on Shinzaburo for their sustenance. If any misfortune falls on Shinzaburo, it will also fall on them. Thus he tells the spirit that if they can receive a certain sum in gold, they will not need the samurai's support and can do as asked. Wayuna turns to Otsuya and says that they have threatened an innocent man and have no reason to bring ill upon his head. Instead, Otsuya should accept that Shinzaburo has changed his mind. But Otsuya says that she cannot stop thinking of Shinzaburo and will never stop wanting to be with him in life or death. While she talks, she hides her decaying face in her sleeve and asks that she be able to see Shinzaburo face to face and talk to him herself. She convinces Oyoni that they must find the money for Tomozo. They compel Tomozo to promise on his life that he will remove both the Ofuda and the gold image worn around Shinzaburo's neck if they bring him the gold. The next night, they show up at his house with the gold. He had never thought it possible that these mere spirits of the night could find the gold, but Otsuya came from a wealthy home. She had found a way. Bowing deeply, Tomozo knows he must abide his side of the bargain. The next day, he removes the Ofuda around the window as promised, and after sneaking into the manor, he takes the gold medallion while Shinzaburo soaks in a bath. And that night, the two spectral women approach with their hideous rotting faces hidden by their sleeves, and they enter through the back window, where the Ofuda strips of sutra had been torn away by Tomozo. The next day, a fearful Tomozo approaches his master's house, for he dared not approach during the night. What untold horrors have they done to his master, who has been silent all morning? He opens the sliding doors and calls within. Shinzaburo does not respond. Tomozo calls out repeatedly, but only silence answers him. With his wife behind him, they enter the manor and push open the door to the bedroom. The room is dark, and so they open the shutters to let light fall into the room. When they look at the bed, they cry out in fear. Shinzaburo lays there dead. His face is open grotesquely in the manner of a man who has died in the worst agony and terror a man can know. His mouth open in a distorted and elongated scream, and his eyes wide and blank. Next to Shinzaburo in the bed are the decaying remains of a woman. Her body is mostly bones with some loose flesh and sinew holding them together. Her arms cling fast around his neck in a lover's embrace. Otsuya has found him and taken him to his doom, a place beyond the grave from whence he will never return. Part 7. Karma. Tomozo calls Yusai, who looks at the bodies and quickly understands what happened. He also quickly ascertains that Tomozo has taken actions that resulted in undoing the protections made by Shinzaburo. Yet the situation is too bizarre for him to call the authorities or to have Shinzaburo arrested for theft of the gold or of the Buddha medallion. Instead, Yusai calls upon the high priest, Ryoseki. They sit at the temple, and Ryoseki explains that Shinzaburo was the victim of bad karma and that Tomozo was a bad man and unfaithful servant. Yusai is convinced that he has seen evidence for the first time that karma transcends lifetimes. While Yusai tries to understand what has happened, Ryoseki tells him something unexpected. Though Shinzaburo has a family cemetery and plot in which he would traditionally be buried, it would not be proper to bury him there in this situation. Instead, he must be buried in the tomb next to Otsuya. This is because their karmic connection is deep and spans many lifetimes. Yusai follows the directions of the high priest and builds a tomb from his own money next to Otsuya. It is said to this day that their tombs still lay side by side, forever connected. Karma has brought them together at last. And thus ends the love story of Otsuya, Shinzaburo, and the Peony Lantern, considered one of the 3 great ghost stories of Japan. In another version of this story, Tomozo and Yusai find Shinzaburo's manor empty with no signs of the young samurai. But when they open the tomb of Otsuya, they find him buried with her in a lover's embrace. Whether he went there voluntarily to end his life for his love, or whether she dragged him to this grave to be at her side, it is never known.
This has been Mysterious Japan, created, written, and translated by Heath Havey. Thank you for listening and making this podcast possible. Please visit our website at www.themysteriousjapan.com for more information. Please join us next time as we continue to explore the dark histories and strange mysteries of Japan.